And welcome to the Big Gunner podcast. Fun one today because we had the schedule release, which I think is one of the more fun days of the year. We make our early predictions where we think we're going to go. And today, what I'm going to do is give you the highs and the lows of it. What I think is going to be a interesting run early. We got a bunch of playoff teams, very similar to go back, and I'm going to take us back, if I can, to the 1984 experience that I had as an equipment manager with the Giants, and I'm going to bring the schedule then to where we are now. So in 1983, the Giants were 3-12-1, coming off a year where the coach was in question. Now it wasn't as public as as it is today with the media and the social media and all the faces outside of the league that you see talking and generating, a little impulse about the game of football. But what I see, and I saw with the Giants, was we were basically trying to get back to that 81 playoff team that we were. And so the season we started off with 5 of the 6 games with playoff teams from the previous year. And I look at the schedule today: Washington, Dallas, Kansas City, Chargers, New Orleans, Philadelphia, Denver, Philadelphia. 6 of those 8 games in those first 8 are going to be with playoff teams. So we're going to get a real indication. And also take you back to a conversation I had with the great Bill Parcells. So as we would go out on a Saturday morning and his superstition brought us to throwing a football around before the Saturday walk through practice, he talked about the fact that the schedule was so hard and that he could be out of here real quick. And I hopefully comforted him by saying, I think you had a great camp. I think we're ready, and I think this team's going to be better. And he goes, why do you think that? And I said, because you picked the right quarterback. So I'm going to blend in this. We're out of the Daniel Jones era. We're looking toward the Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart era. 3 new guys that come in and fill up our quarterback room. I also look at very similar situation that he picked Phil Simms, who had been with our team. This was his 6th year as a Giant, had suffered through a tremendous amount of injuries, similar to what Daniel Jones did. But yet we felt that he was the best guy to move forward. I think we have a better group of guys. We don't know who that best guy is to move forward. I'm hoping that it's Russell Wilson who starts, and the first choice at quarterback is the guy who takes us to the best, gives us the best chance to win this season. But this is what I think. Parcells asking me if he thinks he could be out of here if he doesn't get off to a good start is very similar to Brian Daboll's mindset. That I think Brian Daboll has to come to the conclusion that he must get off to a good start. Hence, we saw all the concentration and videos coming out of the rookie camp that he was working with Jackson Dart closely. He's trying to find out if he can go, how quick Jackson Dart could be ready is his initial thing. If Jackson Dart was his guy, and and Shane said we all came together, but it was clear that Dart was the guy that Daboll wanted, and he's letting Daboll basically help him with that decision. I think that's where we're at with the quarterback situations, and I think Daboll really wants to see Jackson Dart come out and play the best and possibly think about going into the regular season. And we open up right away at Washington, who did the exact same thing, drafting Jaden Daniels 2 last year, who I thought was going to be a star. Turns out for one time in my life I was right, and that's where we're going to be in. And then we go down to Dallas. So as I pick apart this whole schedule right now, I'm going to give you the better priorities. The reason why I think we can win at Washington is we've played them very tough. Last year, Jaden Daniels was in the second game. They won a game, first time in history, won a game with 7 field goals against 3 touchdowns. We went for 2 in these cases and missed an extra point and caused us to get a little bit of disarray as far as converting, and we ended up losing the game 21-18. And that was probably a start. But if you go back to our recent history, we've played Washington very tough. And I think we have a chance, and I'm going to go with that. We go down there and actually beat Washington because we're going to be healthy. We're going to be better. And I think there's going to be a little bit of pressure applied to Washington with the success they had last year. So I think there's a really good chance we can go down and keep that game close, if not win. And I go back to the catalyst of the 2022 season when we went down to Tennessee, who has had the best record in the AFC the year prior. We were a 5.5-point underdog, and Saquon Barkley made the great 2-point conversion to take the lead, and we held on to a win at the end of that game, beating a really good team. And I think it was Brian Daboll's first game, and I think it sets a precedent to how that season went on. You know what happened playoff game win in Minnesota, get destroyed by Philly, and then the rest of the last 2 years have been complete disarray. So I'm going to go look and start off before I get into the schedule picking. But I know that Washington, be opening at Washington, is kind of a pretty good indicator for me where we're at. A team that still might have surprised everybody, that won a lot of close games, that snuck up on everybody that won't this year. A team that we've always had confidence that we could beat. We got swept last year, but I think we had them 5 out of 6 in the last, maybe 6 out of 7 out of 8 in the last, 4 or 5 years. Even when we were bad, we were beating Washington. So I really look at it like I think it's a good indicator. And I also like going to Dallas early, getting those road division games out of the way. I kind of like how important it is going to be to start. So it's going to come down to the big start of the season. But for me, the main focus is going to be looking at our roster. So if we start off, the key components, what I talk about all the time, is the offensive line. And Jermaine Elamanour is probably the most indispensable guy on our roster. Looking at what he did, moving over to left tackle, playing well. What didn't result in wins, but he did solidify his space on that line as being a guy who also could go inside and play guard. So what we have to do with our line is it's going to key factor, again, is going to be Andrew Thomas. And I also going to add into that also is John Michael Schmitz. And what I mean by that is the center's got to be the nucleus. He has to come out and play better. I think he's been kind of an underachieving for his first 2 years as at center for us. So I'm kind of looking at he's got to step his game up. And I think with what we've done, bringing back the roster of linemen that we had last year, pretty much we didn't really unload anybody. We thought Evan Neal would go. We might have a chance to put him in and pull him inside the guard to see what happens. We drafted Mabo. I think people are going to see that he can play. A lot of people have high expectations, not only the roster spot, but he plans on being a starter week 1, which would be unbelievable if that would happen. But it's going to come out to him playing right tackle and moving Elamanour inside the guard, which would probably solve all of our offensive line problems. And our offensive line, when healthy, played good. But again, it's going to come down to where we're at on our offensive line as far as being healthy. I go back to say that we are 3-17 without Andrew Thomas in the last 2 years. So keeping him healthy is probably just as important as Russell Wilson's effectiveness or Jackson Dart's ability to learn the system real quick and get on the field. I come down to that the offensive line has to play well for this team to have success, and we have to stay healthy. And if I look down at, if I look at all the other, positions that we look at, the secondary help at corner, the safety, Tyler Newman, I think is going to be a star. I think we're coming off a little bit of injury problems with him. He didn't play the last part of the year. I think having Javon Holland come in there was going to help the secondary. But again, our secondary, what we have to do is we have to create turnovers. One of the things we didn't do last year, I think we had 1 interception through 13 games. It happened in week 1 when it didn't matter. I just feel like the secondary has to be turnover, has to create a lot of turnovers. And I think this is going to be where we're, what are going to be the key components to our defense. And I also look at the, Theo Johnson as going to be a player that I'm going to key in on the offensive side of the ball. Started coming around till he got hurt. Can Russell Wilson get him involved? I think a veteran quarterback will kind of find those ways because he's going to have 3 guys on the outside and Slayton, Robinson, and the Neighbors that should create some kind of opening on the interior. And so I look for a little bit of a breakout with Theo Johnson. He's going to have to be part of the success that we have. He's going to have to raise some eyebrows for the Giants to be good. Also, the quarterback situation. I look at the quarterback situation like we have to believe as fans and as an organization that our quarterback situation is way better than it was last year. You have Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito. Now we have Jackson Dart, a potential future quarterback at that, for us at that position. A Super Bowl champion, Russell Wilson, and a veteran who's been around the block and a great locker room teammate in Jameis Winston. So I'm looking at that quarterback room is a big upgrade from last year. And again, if we don't make these critical mistakes and we protect these guys, I believe any team that can protect the quarterback should have success in the NFL. And I'm just hoping that this is the place. But I think we're in a better position there overall. And then I look at the assets that we have offensively. Listen to Bart Scott say, how are we going to score points? It doesn't matter about our pass rush. It doesn't matter about what we're doing. It's whether or not we can put up points. And I believe our offense will be better. I think you have an extra year with Tyrone Tracy. I think Neighbors is only going to get better. And I think having a new guy to throw to him and a guy who's been there, who these kids growing up saw Russell Wilson win Super Bowls and have all that success in Seattle, has to give the offense confidence that they have a leader there and a guy who's proven that he can win. More so than a guy, as much as they like Daniel Jones, had not done anything or proven that he was a winner in this league. So I think that's going to help the mindset of the offense as we get in. And also bringing back key veterans, Darius Slayton, Graham Gano, Casey Kreider, having those people who are giants in the room who've been around this organization who can lead is what I think is going to have to be examined. Because Dable's going to have to count on those leaders in the locker room. I think that was what we have to do is get stability among the players in the locker room that they all can get into the idea of believing. Because I think that's going to be the key factor for this team. Staying healthy and believing. I look down. We kept Kayvon Thibodeau. We gave him his fifth-year option. Again, giving a team confidence. As we look at our defensive front, has to be the number one asset on our team. Star tackle Dexter Lawrence. We paid big money for our edge, Brian Burns, who played reasonably well in a tough season and was laying it out there on the line every single game. So I'm a big fan of Brian Burns' play. He won me over. Although he wasn't productive early on, he came much more productive late, and I liked the way he played. The draft choice, I mean, everybody in the world, and any scout, any draft Nick is telling you that Abdul Carter can't miss. I like the fact we have an edge. I like that he had the banner that he got some of the older Giants back involved, and Phil Simms and Lawrence Taylor talking about wearing both 11 and 56. All this is fun stuff, but it's good for the fan base to see that this guy's bringing it, wanting to be one of these legends, trying to wear one of these legends numbers, all in good fun, but yet a good sign that we might have another star in the making in the first round pick, and we need that. Thibodeau's been kind of a miss, in my opinion. Inconsistent play, big games with multiple sack games, but not as consistent all the way throughout the year. Maybe this will help him. Maybe he moves inside, he goes up against a guard or two, maybe has a little quicker edge. What happens? Do we make some different changes with the four pass rushers? This could be a lot of fun. Remember the last time we had success with this was that Super Bowl run when everybody was moving around and playing inside outside. And, we put a ton of pressure on New England in both those games and end up on our playoff run. So this is a good idea for the Giant front office who's been there for the 20 years to advise this, coaching staff and front office staff that, hey, we've been around, we've seen these things work. So hopefully the Chris Mara and company, put their 2 cents in there and then try to get these guys to realize where we've had success as far as a pass rush. I look at Bobby Okereke is going to be a big factor. Is he healthy? Can he be that leader defensively? I love him. I want him healthy, and I want him making tackles. Dexter Lawrence coming off an elbow. How is Dexter going to be out in training camp? Is he going to be a full go? Is he going to be ready? Micah McFadden didn't miss most of the end of the year. He's going to be an important cog. I'm not a big fan of his missing tackles, but maybe with all the other assets that we have, he can maybe think less on a defensive front, realize he's going to have much more freedom to roam and get shots because they're going to have to worry about the edges now a little bit more. The corners are going to be a little bit better. So, we have all this happening. And the key factor, again, comes down to Andrew Thomas. He has got to stay healthy for this team to have any kind of success. John Runyon, Evan Neal, all these guys. The line has to come back and play well and be healthy. So these are all things we go. So as we now dip into the schedule, I'm going to give you the pluses and minuses of where I think if we can make a playoff run. I look at the Washington and Dallas start saying they're the key to everything. 0-2 could set the season off. A 2-0 start in these two games, which I think both games are winnable. As crazy as that sounds, being optimistic, but both games are winnable. If that happens, I think it changes the whole dynamic of the locker room. We cannot go 0-6 in the division. We have to find some success, and I like that it starts right away. Teams may be coming out of camp trying to find themselves. The Giants are a good coaching staff. I trust in Brian Dable, and I believe they have to go out and be prepared. These two games are catamount to this season and where it's going to go. So I'm going to say we're going to, in a perfect world, we go down and pop Washington as we've had success with in the past. Played them tough in both games. They got away from us a little bit in the second game, but we had our chances in the first game to win. And it was the coming out party from Malik Neighbors. At Dallas Dallas is going to be going after a new coaching staff again. I like our chances there. I think we're going to compete. I think we're catching them when we're healthy. And I like our chances there. Then it comes home to Kansas City on a Sunday night game, and I'm going to say that that's going to be a tough game to win or not. Kansas City comes off playing Philly the week before, and I think they have a tough game. Detroit or somebody playing afterwards, so maybe we can sneak the chance to get Kansas City sleeping. But I think the nationally televised game, I think, might get them up for it. That they're alone standing might be kind of something that we don't want. But also, if we go 2-0, there's going to be a vibe in that stadium to see the perennial AFC champs come in and play us. So I think that should be pretty interesting. LA Chargers come to town. I'm going to give us a win in that game too. They're going through some transition. Everybody loves Harbaugh. They're a playoff team, bringing in some new skill people. Tough to go play an early game going on to the East Coast to do that. Notoriously, that's a tough spot for road teams out west to play an early 1 o'clock game. I kind of like our chances there. Then we go down to New Orleans, and I think we could beat New Orleans. So all of a sudden, you start off with a 4-1 game, 4-1 run, and then now we got a short week Thursday night with Philadelphia, who is coming off a game at Denver, which is really tough, or Denver at home, I'm sorry, which is really tough. Physical game. Maybe they're a little beat up to come up and play us Thursday. Maybe it's with Saquon Barkley winning the Super Bowl, all that vengeance against our team. Maybe has left them a little bit. Maybe I'd say, maybe we probably with 4-1 start and we're healthy and we're playing well and Russell's got us going, or Dart's coming out there looking like a world beater and the media's turning away from him. Maybe we steal one over Philly. So now we're 5-1, and then we go out to Denver, which I think is going to be a very tough place to play. Even though we have 10 days off, notoriously that's a statistic. That is a cover number when the team is playing a team on a short week compared to the team having the 10 days off or a bye week. And I think we're going to say that Denver probably beats us. I think a tough game to play it, so we go to 5-2. Then we go back to Philly, the revenge factor. Probably think they beat us down there. We go to 5-3. Now it comes to San Francisco. And that would be the spot that I think would kind of be a really tough game for us. But I think, they're going to be beatable. Who knows where they're at, the season, how it started off. I think we could take San Francisco at home. So now we're up to 6-3, 6-3. And then we go at Chicago. Everybody loves Chicago. I'm not a big fan of Caleb Williams. What happens with the health? I think we go out there because we have a vibe and we're 6-3. I think we can go out and beat them. And we're 7-3. I like the rookie head coach Johnson, but I think he's a proponent of what the talent he had in Detroit. I'm sorry, and I don't know that he's going to have that kind of roster base in Chicago. I think the quarterback's going to be a little tougher to coach. Maybe they're better at that point. I think we upset them and we take the shot. We're 7-3. Then Green Bay comes in. Who knows where Green Bay is going to be? If we're 7-3, I like our chance to go 8-3. Then we go out to Detroit. Very tough game. Don't think we have a chance there. 8-4. Then we play New England. We don't know where New England's going to be. We have to anticipate if we're 8-4, that's a win at 9-4. Then we got Washington at home. Who knows where Washington's be? But if we're 9-4, I like our chance to win. Then I have a tough time with Minnesota. I just think they're better than people think. So maybe we get that little weakness and that we're high on our own, our own clips and thinking how great we are, and we get us stunned. And then I think we go to Vegas and go to Dallas, and I think those teams will both be out of it at that point, and we get wins. So I could see 11, 12-win season if everything works out to be. Very similar to what happened in 84 where we made the playoffs, end up going out beating the Rams, when no one thought we had to do anything. Coaching comes around. That's the upside. Now I'll give you the negative. So now if I look at it as a realist, what everybody at ESPN says, listen to Bart Scott say how we're going to score, how we're going to have our problems, you got to think that the first 4 games are going to be tough on us. So on the low side, you got to think at Washington, they're a playoff team. We're probably going to struggle to win, although I think we can win that game and will. If we had to say that most of, observers are going to say this would be it. Remember, we are starting off with the toughest schedule in the league. And one of the things that I heard from Adam Chernow from Right Angle Sports, who had a big laugh when it came to our schedule, was like, how can the team who is 3-14 have the most difficult schedule in the league? And he said, this is where he made a statement that all the things should be conference driven and not division. Most like every other leagues and stuff have conference seedings, and conference that wouldn't have to be a division game. So this way there's no rivalries or whatever. I like the divisions. He's speaking from a Canadian standpoint. I think that divisions have to be an important part. I think those 6 division games are the most important games that we play all year. I think they're the most interesting games. And I think they're the most competitive. I think because you have a familiarity, I think a lot of the tougher games and strange things happen in those games because of the familiarity. So I'm not a fan of that statement, but I understand his point that how can we have the hardest schedule in the league coming off a 3-14 season? That's my thought. So then we go to New Orleans. I think we could beat New Orleans, get our first win, and then we have the Denver Philly run where I think we're 1-7, and then it could go spiral. And at that point, Brian Dable is gone. I just don't see him surviving. So to me, the whole factor is getting off to that quick start. Looking at that those first two games are going to be key. And I think if we can get through those two games, maybe 1-1, 2-0, that will start. I think if they're 0-2, maybe a blowout, I think it's going to get the fan base stirring up the issue. I pray that the Mara family doesn't listen to this. I really want to see where this team progress. I want to see the competitiveness, and I really want to see what happens in the quarterback room. Is can we get Jackson Dart to play or be good enough? Because I think what's going to happen is if we get off to that 0-4 start, and Jameis doesn't look like he's really the guy that they feel comfortable taking over, you're going to see Jackson Dart sooner or later, maybe even against Philly or New Orleans. That's what I think. So hopefully he doesn't get to that. Hopefully get off to a good start. Hopefully Russell Wilson is our starter that I believe he should be, and he gets us out to a good start. I hope that he's embracing all this Knicks stuff. I see him at the Knicks games wearing the Giant stuff and wearing the Knicks stuff. So he's fitting right in if he wants to be. So my feeling is that he's going to be the guy opening day, and hopefully we can get a win in Washington and take it from there. But the bad side is going to be, I think, the under 5.5 wins could be a possibility. I would take over 5.5 wins, saying that this team is going to be competitive, but it's all going to come down to our health. Now let's take it over to a little bit of gambling. The NBA, so disappointing watching the last couple games. The 30-point win by the Knicks, the 30-point win by OKC. Again, the NBA, you have is struggling with this product, lack of competitive games, these crazy comebacks, just a lot different than what you would normally see. These series hopefully will open up and be a little bit more competitive. The Knicks in Indiana, I look at it this way. I like Indiana in game one, plus the 4.5. I'm rooting for the Knicks in the series. I think it's good for the league to go out and get it. I just think Indiana's a terrible matchup for them. They're a little bit more experienced and went to the championship last year. Halliburton gets hurt. Would they have given Boston a little bit more of a run? We don't know. But I kind of look at it like I'm going to take my shot with both underdogs in game one for these reasons. In the previous conference semifinals, all underdogs won on the money line and covered in game one. Golden State went into Minnesota and beat Minnesota. We all remember that without Steph Curry. Denver makes a miraculous comeback to beat, after Holmgren misses 2 free throws, to beat OKC in game one. We all know the historical Boston collapse as the Knicks overcome a 20-point third quarter lead to beat the Celtics. And the one I had right off the bat, getting 8, was I thought Indiana was going to give Cleveland all they wanted, and they was right. So we have 4 games, all won by the underdog in one of these series. I'm going to go out and say the same thing continues. I'm going to take Minnesota plus 7.5 in game one at OKC. I'm going to take Indiana plus 4.5 against the Knicks. I might take a little small money line play just to see what you think is happening there. That's just my handicapping and thinking where I want to go. As far as the hockey goes, pick the games. So the series, I think it's going to be, I really want to see the Knicks win. I just think Indiana's got a little too much. And I think OKC in the end will find a way to squeeze out a 7-game series against Minnesota. OKC is just a little bit deeper on the bench. I think they run the same guys, a lot of the same type of players in this game. I think that OKC will have a little bit easier time without that Jokic factor. So I think Holmgren and Hartenstein will be a little bit more of a problem for Minnesota. I think on the interior, protecting the rim, and as well as Rudy Gobert not being that offensive threat, I think that probably is what the difference is in the series. So I'm going to say we're going to take OKC in 7, and I'm going to take Indiana in 6. I think we're going to see that they run guys at New York where they have a bunch of players that can guard Brunson. We're going to see right early where's Jalen Brunson as far as his legendary factor, New York factor, because he's slowly moving up the ladder, being one of the great Knicks you'll ever see. And he's sure putting on a show in the last 2 years in the playoffs. So it's going to be really tough. I just like Indiana. I think if the Knicks get by this, it'll be great for the league, great for ratings. If they get in New York, either OKC or Minnesota. The Minnesota angle is kind of fascinating after the big trade with DiVincenzo and Randall going over to Minnesota and Towns going into New York and then facing in the finals would be kind of pretty good storyline for the league also. Now we get to the hockey, which has been much more enjoyable. The Florida Panthers come up with a big 6-1 win on Sunday. Game we thought we were a little shaky about going in. Total drop from 5.5 to 5. Another mysterious total drop, but the lines makers don't get it right this time. The players do. They go over 5. My thought is Carolina and Florida is going to be a nip and tuck series in the corners. I just think it's going to be down to the goaltending. I think Bob has a little edge, and I think in both these series it's going to come down to that. I kind of like the Panthers in 6. Just kind of looking at it like I just think their experience in this end, but we have the revenge factor with Carolina getting swept in the finals. I think Carolina's a little bit bigger, stronger, better, and I think gives us problems. Panthers were 2-1 in the regular season against them. Kind of feel like maybe they finally got over the hump there with that big win in Toronto. Didn't like seeing it go to a game 7. Coming back off 2 days rest, I kind of like Carolina in game 1, but I think the Panthers win the series. Also out west, Edmonton and Dallas should be fantastic. Like Skinner with 2 consecutive shutouts. Now he gets some time off. This is going to be a test. I kind of like the surprise to see Edmonton favored 120 in the series. Dallas with home ice. Makes you think that Edmonton's going to win. This is going to be really tough. But I'm going to take Dallas in 7 and try to think that it's going to be a different matchup than last year with Edmonton getting the finals. But either way, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not in love with either one. I kind of like both home teams in game 1. And I think it's going to come down to, again, it's Ottinger against Skinner, in those series. So that's it for this week. We kind of like, in the finals, Florida Panthers played Dallas. We kind of like the Dallas Stars to win the Stanley Cup. Love to see Florida win 2 in a row. I'm on Indiana and OKC. I think OKC is clearly the best team all regular season. I think they show it. Pull out a 7-game series in the end to make it. So we're on OKC and the Dallas Stars. The Midwest conquers in both sports. And then, we'll take it from there. So more Giant stuff next week. Again, I think the schedule prediction is over 5.5 wins. I think the New York Giants will probably be a 9-8 team. I think Dable and Shane make it through. But we're going to see a lot more to come, a lot more with mini camps, training camps, regular season games. But we'll keep you in the loop any more Giant news. So until then, go Big Blue.